tariffs continue to stay longer for, let's say, 3 to 6 months, and we continue to have this back and forth battle between different countries, even with our closest allies and stuff here, I mean, the cost of just everyday things are going to be very expensive to afford.
Cost of living.
Welcome to Bay Area Home Hustle Podcast. I'm your host, Parm Rahi, and joined with my partner, Mike Brown.
Hi guys, we're back.
Absolutely. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. Let's talk about what's happening in real estate now.
Okay.
Right? Let's talk about, well, there's so much going on, right? We have tariffs. We have
Recession fears.
possible recession, or in a recession already, possibly.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah, I know. More inflation, possibly coming down the road from the tariffs, right? From the set of tariffs. What else?
High rates.
High rates. We still have high rates. We have plenty of inventory. Inventory has actually grown year over year. It's over more than 20% right now.
Right.
There's a lot more properties on the market. So lots going on in the market. So,
Okay, I just want to say something first.
yeah.
I think we're in a buyer's market.
Yeah, 100%. Some markets, I think not all of them.
Not all, but
Yeah, we
but
definitely
getting
have.
Bay Area.
Yeah, we
Still,
definitely have.
it's getting competitive.
Right, we definitely have micro markets.
Yeah.
Right, some markets are moving faster than others,
Right.
but yeah. So let's do this. Let's talk about who should be buying in this market, right? And there's so much noise going on. There's so much happening in the news. You know, some of the outlets, blow it out of proportion and stuff. But let's talk about who should be buying first. Let's talk about buyers.
Okay, let's talk
What
about
type
buyers.
of buyers should be buying in this market?
First-time home buyers. This
Right.
is ideal for them right now.
Okay.
Why? Yes, we all know that rates are still high. Well, they go up and down, right? First-time home buyers, other than having perks as being first-time home buyers,
Right.
the prices are adjusted.
Yeah.
Okay, and because of that, there's less competition.
Right.
You have more room for negotiations.
Right. They can ask for more credits and stuff back.
Right,
Yep.
and there are incentives.
Yeah.
Those are the incentives that you can ask for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally agree with that. So yeah, first-time home buyers do have a leg up, especially if you're. Well, make sure a couple things you want to make sure first, right? Make sure you're approved. Make sure you have the funds to close. If you're getting an FHA loan, make sure you have like at least, 7% saved up, 39% for the loan, another 3.5% for closing costs, right? Because if you're getting an FHA loan, everything has to be working properly, especially with appraisals, FHA appraisals.
Before we get ahead of that, I think also check on your credit. Make sure that your
Yeah.
debt ratio is low.
Well, 100%. That should be all lined up. So make
Yeah.
sure you're pre-approved. Make sure you have the money. Make sure you understand how much you can afford and what market you can buy in. Remember, because in the Bay Area, not every single market is the same, right?
Right.
And so that's the key to remember.
Don't look for homes that you cannot afford.
Right.
We always talk about that too.
Right. And like Mike mentioned, there are plenty of incentives. Once you find a property, you have a very high chance of asking for credits, especially if there are repairs that exist on the property. You can ask for a seller to credit that or have them fix all those things, right? Number two, you can even ask to have, to pay off.
Rate buy downs.
Exactly, the rate buy down, right?
Yeah.
You can even ask a seller to cover some of that as well too, because remember, rates are still elevated. We're looking at 6.84 as of today, and the FHAs are like in the low sixes, 6.25 or 6.23 as of today. So don't forget that too, right?
Right.
Who else should be buying? I mean, we got first-time home buyers. How about people that are,
Have a lot of equity, the move up buyers?
right?
Yeah. Okay. So what was it during the pandemic? How much equity was accumulated?
40%.
My God. Okay.
More than 40%.
So within these
There's a lot of equity.
5 years, you just gained 40% equity in your home.
Right. Yeah, because what's happening was prior to the pandemic in 2019, the values were headed downwards, right? And all of a sudden the pandemic happened.
Everything went crazy.
Rates went down to the zeros. Everybody wanted to buy a second home because they can no longer work out of the office. They wanted a second home, more space.
They got a bigger home for less
bigger
money.
home for less. Exactly. And that ultimately led us to in this situation we are today.
Right.
So there's a lot of equity out there. So then the next set of people that are looking to buy in this market should be like, if you're upgrading because the property that you're living right now is too small, right? You're
Right.
upgrading for that reason.
Here's another thing I just realized. We talk about this big equity accumulation, right? That
Right,
you build your equity up within 5 years.
right,
Because of this, most probably when you bought your home for less money and this because of this jump in value,
right.
you could actually negotiate because you can put a bigger down.
Yeah,
If you just say that you put 40% down instead of that 22%, right?
yeah.
You can really negotiate with the seller.
100%. Right. I mean, I think folks that have a lot of equity in their properties right now, especially if they're moving up to a different size, I think they have the leverage, honestly.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, some of these folks in the Bay Area are like, let's take example of a townhome or something, right? They bought that townhome like for like $500,000 4 years ago. They're sitting on $200,000 to $300,000 in equity right now.
There is no townhome that's less than a mil
Yeah,
nowadays.
now there's nothing, right? I mean, I'm talking about 5 years ago
Yeah,
that existed. In
yeah. They doubled
2019 that
up their
existed,
money.
so it's doubled up.
Yeah.
So I think that's another set of buyers that are, if you're in that market right now, you have the advantage. Yeah, you have a bigger down payment. You can negotiate a better rate. You can buy down, and you can take seller credits too. Remember, and there's a lot more choices too, right? We have a lot of inventory, so there's a lot more choices in the market that do exist.
We actually picked up a client. In the future. They're actually townhome owners,
Right, and they're probably
and
moving up.
they came to our open house. They're looking at a bigger yard, bigger home. They
Right,
want a single family because they're looking at living with their in-laws and raising a family.
right, moving
See,
up.
and they're built their equity up. So that's
100%,
how it works.
100%. What are the next set of what other buyers should be looking at this market? How about like landlords and stuff? If you're
Yes.
looking for
Okay.
investment properties,
Yes. Those who already have their
but is it an
own
ideal
residence.
market to be buying in this market though?
It all depends. Okay, so you're not going to look at the 20 unit apartments, right? Those are going to be really astronomical in price, right? I mean,
Right.
so it's like for the big time players.
Yeah.
But those that are 5 units or more, like 8 units, those are very common, especially in the Bay Area, right?
Okay. So we're looking at 8 units or less then.
8 units or less,
Okay.
and those are just under a mil.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that again, you have to make sure that you do your due diligence too,
Of
right?
course, of
The
course.
numbers have to make sense,
Right.
especially if you're switching from a home buyer to a homeowner to a investor, and you're thinking about renting and becoming a landlord. There's a lot of things you have to worry about.
That's another can of worms,
Yeah,
but
that is. But the few that I can think of top of my mind is that know what you're buying, know where you're buying,
right,
right? Know what the rent controls are in that city too. You need to check those too, because
right,
some of our cities have very strict rent controls
right.
and rent appreciation in terms of what you can and cannot do are there, and you have to be very very careful. You have to take that in consideration, especially if you're buying an 8 unit building or something like that
Right.
too. You have to consider the vacancy rate too, like
Yeah.
right, because there'll be months where you don't have anybody in that
Right.
specific unit, and it's just sitting empty. You
Right.
got to be able to absorb that as well too.
Right. There's
Um,
also it's a business, so you need a business license
yeah, you're
if
gonna need a
you're in
business
Oakland.
license. Yeah,
Yeah. So it's you know what? I think this is a topic for another show.
I think so too. I think, excuse me. I think it needs to be covered on its own, because like I said, there's a lot. It's easy to say, oh, I'm gonna buy a 8-plex building or whatever, and rent it out. It's easy to say that, but once you actually get into it, it's difficult. And the other thing I was gonna mention this too. If you are a homeowner and thinking about cashing out the equity and buying another home, renting it out, I'll be cautious with that, and here's why. And I wanna say that because here's the thing: you're a homeowner already. You're living in your house, and now you're thinking about, okay, I'll take out the $400,000 and buy a $800,000 property, and be able to collect like $3,500 in rent, and thinking that's all great and dandy. But be careful, because you have to take into consideration all the costs that go into
Yeah.
it. Because remember, that second home is your investment property now, right? It's not considered as a primary residence. A lot of the perks that you get with primary residence are gone, right? So you have to make sure that if you're collecting, let's say, $3,500, you have to say you're not collecting $3,500. You're collecting like $2,500 at the end
Right.
of the day, because $1,000 is going to go into maintenance and so forth. And then you'll have
Insurance. There's a lot of little
then
things.
insurance
Yeah.
is another thing,
Yeah.
right? Insurance is very tricky in California as well too. But remember, there's a lot of things that go wrong with the property. So this is why when people say, I want to become a landlord, or I want to buy a investment property, we always tell them, like, look for something more than 1 or 2 units, right? Look
Right.
for 3, 4 units, five
Right.
units, less than 8 if you can't afford it. Don't go for a single family home and thinking you want to be a landlord with that. That's just a very um,
You'll be carrying two mortgages.
yeah, you'll be carrying two mortgages. It's very tough to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
in this market.
right.
Remember, we're still in this very unstable market, right? I mean, the rates fluctuate every other day. Something comes out of our president's mouth, and next thing you know, tariffs are gone up, tariffs are gone, moved on down, markets are fluctuating, right? So you gotta make sure you have a plan and when you have a plan ready to go, right? Make
Right,
sure you know what you're trying to achieve with what you have, right?
right.
Now, on the flip side of this, so we talked about buyers, right? Is
Who
there
should
anything
sell
else?
right now?
Yeah, who should be selling? Are you a seller? What should you be doing? Okay, let's talk about sellers.
Let's look at, okay, so those who sell usually have changes in their life, right? Life changes.
Right, job changes, life
Job,
changes.
good one. Okay, so where we are right now, we're in Newark, and this is our listing, and it's only been a week or so, a little bit more maybe.
And yeah,
Um, so the reason why we have this listing is because of the situation of a job location.
right.
So the seller actually had to leave the state,
Yeah,
right? So that's where we are. I mean, this is real life, man. So,
yeah,
or we have upsizing or even downsizing.
right, right. A lot of the folks, like if you look at a lot of cities, let's talk about specifically. Let's talk about like Pleasant Hill, Concord, Walnut Creek, Danville, right? A lot of the folks there are downsizing, right?
Right.
You have older folks that have been in the properties for 20 years. When I say a lot, I'd say a big portion of it, and there's also a other side too that we're gonna talk about in a second. So they're downsizing, they're selling their properties, maybe they're moving closer to their grandkids, or maybe they're just buying a property altogether in some sort of
Or somewhere in the
sandy,
lake.
yeah,
They like
somewhere by
fishing.
the lake or somewhere by the ocean, or maybe they're moving
Right,
to a completely different state, right?
right, right.
Just for practical reasons because California is pretty expensive. Um, so that's that. On the flip side is I've seen in specifically like in Walnut Creek, there are a lot of people that bought these properties in 2021, right? They bought them
Wow.
high. They
Okay.
bought them high for like let's say 1.15 or something, and now they're selling it for like 1.8. So there's not a lot of profit they're trying to take out of it. Maybe they're selling because they bought a bigger home,
Right.
because they were away from their job and now they're asked to come back to their job, and they don't want to commute or for whatever reason, right? So there's a lot of that's happening too. So that's another reason people are downsizing. And then you have regular people that are just folks that are just retiring or moving away, like you
Right,
said,
right.
and they need to sell,
That's
which
what
is
I see. I see. Like a couple of open houses that we did, older folks have come in because
yeah,
they were condominiums,
right,
right? So they tell me, oh, we're living in Walnut Creek and now we want to move to a condo.
right,
So it actually really, I mean, they still keep within like urban areas, but instead of moving to the mountains, but
yeah,
that means there's still activity, there's still movement.
right. And remember, if you bought your home, and I'm talking about speaking with sellers specifically, if you bought in like in 2020, you have a lot of equity. We already talked about
Yeah.
that. You have more than 40% in equity, right? And that sort of is a leverage too in this market. Remember, we have inventory that creeped up in the last month and a half, two
Yeah, they're
months,
still increasing. Yeah.
and it's still increasing. But that doesn't mean we have a lot of inventory to cover all the demand that exists out there. Yes, the demand currently is sidelined, right?
Right.
Because of these rates, because there's so much uncertainty in the market. Right? People are afraid. People are afraid about these tariffs because remember, what is tariff going to do? End of the day, a tariff's likely going to increase the things that we consume every day, right? In other
Everything.
words, inflation will go up,
Yeah.
right? The things that you buy every day, like groceries and things, it's getting expensive and expensive. So people are afraid. People are holding back, saying, "Okay, I don't want to go out and purchase a property today or whatever,
Right.
any big item, right? Take a car for instance, same thing, right? And they're holding back. But once this cycle ends, these tariffs
Well, yeah,
hopefully
eventually it'll end.
eventually end, right? Rates will come down, right? And what do you think is going to happen with demand? Demand's
It's
going to
gonna
go up,
shoot it up, man.
right? So the inventory that we have it looks like we have a lot of inventory because we see or you see, for sale, signs everywhere in your
Everywhere.
market, and you think, oh, everybody's selling,
Yeah.
but it's still not enough. Okay, if you reduce the rate by even 50 basis point
Oh,
and take it under 6%, this inventory will get eaten up
there
really
was a
fast.
week that has actually dropped, what, 25 basis points? And we
25 and
saw the activity in
yeah, it
open
went down by
houses.
50 basis
Yeah.
point.
and then people started coming out.
The rates were sitting at like above 7%,
Right.
almost 7.5%.
Right.
And they came down like 6.5%. So yeah, the applications for those mortgages, even refinances, went up through the roof, right?
Right.
So I mean, I would encourage you as a seller, you gotta kind of keep that. You have to keep that into your sort of purview too, right? Keep a lookout on what's happening in the market, right? What's happening with rates specifically. Your agent should guide you, but as a seller, you should know that too. Keep track of that.
And as a seller, there's two types of. Some people really like the homes with the bigger yard,
Yeah.
and some people like newer homes because they don't want to deal with the yard. So
Right.
there's a market for everything.
Absolutely.
There's always a buyer that's going to fit your home.
Right. Yeah, you might not get like 10 offers.
Right.
That doesn't exist in this market, but you will get one or two offers that are
Right.
serious. People that are really looking. So the couple of things I would tell you, I mean, you chime in anytime, right? Like when we're preparing a property, what are some of the things we're doing? We're making sure the property is moving ready.
It's presentable.
That
Yeah.
and moving ready, right?
It's turnkey, what they call it, turnkey. So
100%.
they don't have to do anything.
Right. And that's what you want. Remember, because there's a lot of inventory out there, now buyers are pickier, right? If your property is sitting there and it hasn't been nothing done to it, like it's not painted, it looks crappy, the floor's all messed up, the kitchen cabinets are falling apart, likelihood they'll pass on to your home is pretty high, right? They'll move on to the next.
Or they'll nickel and dime you. They'll offer a lower price because they know they have to customize it to their liking.
That's right. If it sits on the market for longer than 30 days or something, the chance of you getting a lower offer is very high too.
Yeah,
right.
And that's why a property, you never want a property to be stale. So right off the bat, make your house as beautiful as possible. To quote our president. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, make it beautiful, but also at the same time, make sure that when you're listing your property on the market, make sure you're listing it competitively, right? It's don't just look at the comps in the last 90 days thinking that, oh, this one sold for 1.5, I'm gonna get 1.5 as well too. That doesn't work.
90 days is a long time, folks.
Yeah.
When we're ready to list a property, put it on the MLS, we actually do it. Our very last one that we do is maybe 2 or even the next day.
Yeah.
1 day before. Because that would give us a better, more accurate number to put out.
Right. So we check. So yeah, adding point to Mike's what he said right now is that we check in the last 15 to 20 days what sold the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 30 days, what's listed out there in the last 30 days, and what's coming soon, and what's also pending.
That's right.
You have to look at those, right? You have to look at that list to sold ratio to about like 3% or so, right? So you have to be very careful how you price your property, because remember, if you price it too high in this market, it will sit there, right? But if you price it
just
at
right,
that sweet spot, your property will move. And having said that, we do have micro markets.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
We have areas that properties are selling.
They go into contract in 3 days.
Contract, yeah. Some weekend.
Cities,
yep.
Some neighborhoods, right across the other neighborhood, may sit for 2 weeks or even a month.
Right. So like San Ramon, Walnut Creek, these listings don't stay on the market for longer, right?
Walnut Creek is really good. It's 3 days, 5 days. You're in contract.
Absolutely. So if you're in those markets looking to sell, prepare the property properly, right? Make it move-in ready, right? Stage it really nicely. Price it. Pricing is very important. Sweet spot. And I promise you, it will not stay on the market. Within a week or so, it should be pending as well too.
And I just want to say, if you guys have questions, you can always hit us up.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're like a trove of info.
Absolutely. What else? So you can also, on the flip side of this too, you can wait to see what happens too, right? But waiting will also have its own cost too, and risk as well too, right?
We always say this. Sorry to interrupt, but I always say this. Everybody, I suggest, and we always tell this I think on all videos, I suggest you keep an eye out on the mortgage rates.
Yep, absolutely. Keep an eye on the mortgage rates. Keep an eye on what's happening in the market too, right? And what's happening with like tariffs, what's happening with inflation. Because remember, end of the day, all that's going to affect, right? I mean, if these tariffs continue to stay longer for, let's say, 3 to 6 months, and we continue to have this back and forth battle between different countries, even with our closest allies and stuff here. I mean, the cost of just everyday things are going to be very expensive to afford.
Cost of living,
Cost of
really
living goes
living.
up, right? I mean, I'm already saying it that I think we're already in a
I
recession. I
you
think we're
you
in a
and I are
recession.
Debbie Downers, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a downer. I'm just telling you that we're
but
already in a
we're
recession
realistic.
because
But
people have pulled back already.
I know, no, it's true. But again, as you're saying, micro markets,
Yeah,
certain streets are hotter than other streets. It's really weird, but that's the way it is. But I also want to say this about mortgage rates. Everybody has a number that they feel comfortable with.
yeah.
Okay, so when that happens, talk to your lender, lock in your rate.
Absolutely. And remember,
It
end of the
protects
day,
you.
yeah, and the end of the day, the mortgage number, I mean, yeah, people look at mortgage rates and
Right.
like, oh, it's 6.5%, it's too high. I should have bought it in four or whatever. I mean, that's not what you should be looking at. You should be looking at like what is it that you can afford on a monthly basis, right?
Exactly.
Because remember, end of the day, if you buy a property today at a 6.5% rate with 20% down or 10% down, whatever that case is, 3 years down the line, you're still your property's going to appreciate, right? I mean, you're going to appreciate like almost close to 10% in the next
Look
three
at
years,
4 years during the pandemic, 40%
right?
equity.
So there's a cost to waiting as well too, right? It's not that yes, you are paying a higher mortgage, but you could get a later on you can get a lower
Refi it,
mortgage,
right?
right? But there's a cost to it. You lose on that equity side of it, right? The equity that you gain, not mention the equity that you're paying off, your principal paying off, but also the market equity you'll gain over the next 3 years, right? So I think there's a market. I think there's an opportunity in every single market, even this slow market. There's an opportunity for buyers. There's an opportunity for sellers.
Correct.
Um, and you just have to be sort of vigilant and work with your realtor and your partners and your and your mortgage partners and so forth and see what you can.
That's your team. I mean,
Yeah,
we work with mortgage brokers. We also work with other agents. For information and everything. You need a team to get things done.
that's all I got today.
I want you to read what you showed me the other day.
Oh, what is that?
Slow down markets. I like that
Oh,
phrase.
okay.
I like
Oh,
that
yeah, yeah.
phrase,
This
man.
phrase.
I
Okay,
want
well,
you to read it to our audience.
here we go. It says, slow down markets are where the smart money moves. Okay, so
It's
if you're clear on your goals, play it right in 2025. That's it.
Yeah, it's know what you can do.
Mhm.
That's it. Just know what your needs are. Strategize, and if we can help you, hit us up.